She mentioned mRNA. Remember it for the video on the military doctor. She mentioned ADE, antibody-dependent enhancement. Remember it. This will shock you what they're going to do with the second dose. She mentioned pharmacovigilance tracking system. They need 100 million people to get their data. And after doing 100 million people, they may say, oh, you know what? It's an experimental vaccine. The world has never found itself in this situation. All the countries in the world, without exception, are having serious financial problems because of this lockdown. All the countries are going to be begging soon for the Great Reset. How do we pay our debt? International Monetary Fund, help us. How do we get rid of this burdening debt? The immorality being witnessed in the world right now has never existed. The world lockdown has never existed. Iran is running out of time. The papacy is running out of time. This crisis is not going away, friends. It's only going to get worse. And this is why when I hear church papers, oh, once the vaccine is over, things will go back to normal and we'll get together in church again. Oh, we're going to build a church and plan ahead for 20 years. Friends, wake up. This is not happening. The devil would be a fool not to pull the trigger right now. He has never had this much power before. The devil has never been able to do a worldwide lockdown ever. A couple of videos ago, we studied Satan Operation number 1 and Satan Operation number 2 after the close of probation. In the last days, Satan will appear as an angel of light with great power and heavenly glory. Then will take place the final fulfillment of the Revelator's prophecy, and power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. Revelation 13, 4-18 quoted. Manuscript Releases, Volume 19, page 282. I was sharing that to share with you that this is going to take place before the close of probation. With the quote we just read a little while ago from the Great Controversy, you can see that he's going to be doing miracles and healing people, etc., all before the Sunday law is brought into place. In my last video, 4 or 5 months ago, I shared with you a 14-minute video clip of the Davos World Economic Forum meeting that took place in 2020. I have now taken that video and reduced it to 5 minutes. You know, when I saw that video again now, I was reminded by the Lord, go back and check that video. It shocked me like it's going to shock you, what that man said 7 months ago.
I consider the Trump administration a danger to the world that will disappear in 2020.
What if I told you that Bill Gates, Greta Thunberg, Al Gore, George Soros, Prince Charles, and Cardinal Turkson were meeting in the mountains to plot a global new order to be established on the back of the COVID pandemic? I mean, everyone has spoken here. Everyone who is anyone in the globalist community has gone to Davos, has delivered speeches. They come together, they network, they plan our future.
This transformation essentially means that
this COVID thing is their golden opportunity. And they certainly don't want Trump or anyone else to fix the problem, certainly not prematurely.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
And this is what the war on hydroxychloroquine is all about. I mean, think about this. Why? You mention hydroxychloroquine and you get taken off Facebook, you get taken down from YouTube. Why? Why? Because it's not a vaccine. Because it might fix the problem. This is why those frontline doctors in the white coats, that's why they were banned from social media. Many of them are now losing their jobs. Because, see, the problem is these frontline doctors in the white coats, if they're right, and COVID can be cured without 7 billion doses of Bill Gates' vaccine, well, the Great Reset that they keep talking about in Davos, Switzerland, the Great Reset will be dead on arrival. This is why the 2021 Davos Summit now, 2021, it's coming right up after Christmas, the Davos Summit. And the Great Reset, they need President Joe the Catholic Biden to hand us, the United States, over to them if he wins this election. This is why they're trying so hard to take Donald Trump down. They need to reset everything, including the politics of the United States, the governance of the United States. And of course, friends, we hear a lot about the Green New Deal and all of that, right? We hear Francis with his Laudato Si encyclical and all of that. They're all working together, aren't they?
The house is still on fire. Your inaction is fueling the flames by the hour.
We kind of realize what's going on here. This is not about COVID anymore. This is about a reset of everything. And the United States of America is in the way right now of all of it. So they are destabilizing our entire country. And leaving aside Laudato Si, which is the encyclical of the globalists, it's the encyclical of the United Nations.
I'm sure that we have all read this magnificent encyclical that His Holiness Pope Francis has blessed us with.
Francis has already announced the global economic reset of his own last year. He calls it, in his humility, the Economy Francesco. The economy of Francis. Remember? We showed you a bit of this. I'll show you a little more here.
I will come for the economy of Francesco because we need a new economy, a new vision, and the teachings of Pope Francis in Laudato Si.
Isn't that something? Now, this was announced last year, mid-2019. It's almost as if Francis knew that the COVID pandemic and the resulting economic collapse were coming.
But to embrace the possibilities of tomorrow, we must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of the apocalypse.
2 days after Donald Trump gave that speech, the 89-year-old leftist weirdo billionaire George Soros made an emergency intervention where, at Davos, once again, warning that the U.S. 2020 election will determine the, quote, fate of the whole world. Here's what Francis, the Vatican, and Jeffrey Sachs had to say in response.
And it is a dangerous country right now. It will be absolutely dangerous if Trump wins re-election.
Francis invited this guy to the Amazon Synod as an honored guest and advisor. What's he doing in the Vatican? Why? Sachs supports abortion and contraception, but that's not a problem for the Vatican. For the Vatican, for Pope Francis, and for his friends at the UN, Donald Trump is the problem, obviously, friends.
Clearly, I consider the Trump administration a danger to the world, but I regard it as a purely temporary phenomenon that will disappear in 2020.
In November of 2019, again, right before COVID landed, Trump went to the UN, on the floor of the General Assembly, and he declared war on globalism.
The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
And shortly after the speech at the UN, Donald Trump delivered, what do you think happened? The coronavirus was unleashed on the world, and Trump's booming U.S. economy went on life support. Do you think that was an accident? And the name of the game now is to bring the United States economy to its knees, get it out of the way, so that everyone will want the Great Reset. Make the new normal so intolerably abnormal that even you and I, maybe, at some point in the near future, will be begging for the vaccine. For 4 years, I've been trying to stop this man because if he strengthens America, if he makes it great again, if he brings the economy back again, the reset won't happen. The New World Order is going to be set way back. Who knows when they're going to have another COVID opportunity like this one again, and they know it.
Did you pick up in the video that Pope Francis planned the Great Reset in mid-2019? The Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are concealing the true issue, And many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is tending. Its professions are mild and apparently Christian, but when it shall speak, it will reveal the spirit of the dragon. Review and Herald, December 18th, 1888. I have no doubt now that the final fulfillment of the 42 months of Revelation 13 commenced, just as we thought, in the Feast of Unleavened Bread in 2019. With a secret meeting, perhaps in the January 22 to 25, 2019 meeting at Davos, or shortly thereafter, and probably involving the members of COMIS, the European bishops, and the European Sunday Alliance. Do you think these people are all over the world proclaiming Sunday is the day we need if they would not have gotten together with the Pope and said, this is the agenda, how we're going to get there, it's complicated. We got to get rid of America. This is what's coming. Wake up, church. This is not going away. Satan will never have another opportunity like COVID. And God, in His mercy, is giving us time to be sealed or to be sifted out of this message. U.S. bishops discourage Catholics from getting Johnson & Johnson vaccine if given a choice. The announcement which followed a similar proclamation from the Archdiocese of New Orleans last week argued that while USCCB leaders have already condoned the use of COVID-19 vaccines created by Moderna and Pfizer because an abortion-derived cell line was used for testing them, but not in their production, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is different. You will understand why, in the military video, why they're pushing not to use these Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Biden, strikes in Syria send warning to Iran to be careful. February 25th. President Joe Biden said Friday that Iran should view his decision to authorize U.S. airstrikes in Syria as a warning that can expect consequences for its support of militia groups that threaten U.S. interests or personnel. Remember that it was Bush and Cheney and Clinton, the globalists, that wanted to take out Iraq. According to Daniel's 2,500-year-old prophecy of the ram and the he-goat in Daniel 8, what happened to Iraq in 2003 is about to happen to Iran, Iraq, and Syria. This battle will commence the last moments of Earth's history. Do you think it's just coincidence that the first beast of Daniel 7 was like a lion and had eagle's wings? The same symbols used today by the US and Great Britain, which have been allies against Iran, Iraq, and Syria since at least 1986? Is it coincidence that the second beast of Daniel 7 was like to a bear, which is a symbol today used by Russia? The light that Daniel received from God was given specially for these last days. The visions he saw by the banks of the Ulai and the Hiddekel, the great rivers of Shinar, are now in the process of fulfillment, and all the events foretold will soon come to pass. Testimonies to Ministers, pages 112 and 113. Testimonies to Ministers was printed, published the year she died. This statement was made in a letter in 1896. Nobody saw it until this book was printed. The Ulai River is only mentioned twice in the scriptures, in Daniel 8:2 and 8:16. The Hiddekel is only mentioned in Genesis 2:14 and Daniel 10:4. The vision Daniel saw by these two rivers had to do specially with the battle between the ram and the he-goat. Is it a coincidence that the third beast of Daniel 7 was like a leopard? Did you know that the police tactical unit of China is called the Snow Leopard Commando? Is it a coincidence that China's twin-engine fighter bomber is called the flying leopard. The military attaché's corps to China, consisting of 59 military attachés from 42 countries this time, visited the Snow Leopard Commando of the Armed Police Beijing contingent. The JH-7 is an all-weather two-seat twin-engine fighter bomber. The aircraft has also been offered to the export market under the designation FBC-1 Flying Leopard. Pentagon. U.S. contractor dies in rocket attack at Iraq base. The rocket attack was the first since the U.S. struck Iran-aligned militia targets along the Iraq-Syria border last week. It's a coincidence that the fourth dreadful and terrible beast of Daniel 7, which Wycliffe, Tyndale, Hus, Luther, and Ellen White described as the papacy, is now back with his Laudato Si agenda of climate change, and all the world has wondered after the beast? Why did the angel Gabriel tell Daniel in chapter 8, verse 9, "Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be"? Was the battle of Arbela in 331 BC, as Uriah Smith wrote in his book, and as the church teaches, the last end of the indignation? Have you looked up the time appointed? Strong's Concordance assigns its 4150 moed to the words time appointed in Daniel 8:19 and defines it thus: an appointment, a fixed time or season, specially a festival. Slides 141 to 331. In part 2 of my YouTube series, 6,000 Years End in the Year 2022, are a detailed verse-by-verse study of Daniel 8 with maps and news articles dating back to 1986. This is about to happen, my friends. The Muslims are also in the way of the New World Order. This is from Daniel 11. "And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed." Daniel 11:27. "At the time appointed he shall return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant." Daniel 12:29 and 30. I'm sorry. That should be Daniel 11:29 and 30. "And some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them and to purge and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed." Daniel 11:35. Strong's Concordance assigns its 4150 moed to the words time appointed in Daniel 11:27, 11:29, and 11:35, and defines it thus: an appointment, a fixed time or season, specially a festival. The two kings, who are they? My opinion, the only one that is in the way of the New World Order, besides America, the Muslims. The king of the north, the papacy; the king of the south, the Muslims. Who are the only ones that can forsake the Holy Covenant? I'm not going to answer that. You should know that. Who owns the Holy Covenant today? And what is the Holy Covenant? Deuteronomy 4:13. It is the 2 tables of stone given to Moses, the 10 Commandments. All of these events happen on feast days, according to Scripture. According to chapters 7 and 12 in the book of Daniel and chapters 11, 12, and 13 in the book of Revelation, the little horn would persecute God's people for a period of time, times and a half. That is found in Daniel 7:25, Daniel 12:7, and Revelation 12:14. Or 42 months in Revelation 11:2 and Revelation 13:5, or 1260 days, Revelation 11:3 and Revelation 12:6. Why would Mrs. White, in 70 years of ministry, never apply two of those 7 scriptures to the period from AD 538 to 1798, namely Daniel 12:7 and Revelation 12:14? Ellen G. White's commentary on Daniel 12, past or future. I am not going to read all of this, but I want you to look at it, at least just the yellow. Daniel 12, verse 1. And at that time thy people shall be delivered. Go to Early Writings, pages 285 and 286, and you're going to see that it says, it starts with, it was at midnight that God chose to deliver his people. Look at on the left, Daniel 12:2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. On the right, the graves were open, and those who had died in faith under the third angel's message, keeping the Sabbath, came forth from their dusty beds. Look under that. The sky opened and shut and was in commotion. The mountains shook like a reed in the wind and cast out ragged rocks all around. The sea boiled like a pot. This is the end of the world. This is the end of the world. Daniel 12 is the end of the world. And yet, we as a church teach that the prophetic periods in Daniel are in the past. Look at on the left, Daniel 12:3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. Look what Ellen White says on the right. Their countenances were lighted up with the glory of God, and they shone with glory as did the face of Moses when he came down from Sinai. The wicked could not look upon them for the glory. Page 285, Early Writings. This is exactly what Daniel is saying, right? Look on the left, verse 4. Blessed is he that waiteth. Look on the right. And when the never-ending blessing was pronounced on those who had honored God in keeping his Sabbath holy, there was a mighty shout of victory over the beast and over his image. Then commenced the Jubilee, when the land should rest. Soon appeared the great white cloud upon which sat the Son of Man. Page 285, Early Writings. Friends, do you really believe that we are not going to understand what is meant here by then commence the Jubilee? This is the end of the world. This is the most important event in the history of the world. People are going to get excited over this. Jesus is coming. This is where we are. This is Ellen G. White's commentary on Daniel 12:7. We've already read Daniel 12:7 a number of times, so let's now read only the right. Daniel writes that it shall be for a time, times and a half, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. She quotes Daniel 12:7-10. The world is a theater. The actors, the inhabitants of the world, are preparing to act their part in the last great drama. God is lost sight of. A power from beneath is working to bring about the last great scenes in the drama. Satan coming as Christ and working with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in those who are binding themselves together in secret societies. Transgression has almost reached its limit. Confusion fills the world, and a great terror is soon to come upon human beings. The end is very near. We who know the truth should be preparing for what is soon to break upon the world as an overwhelming surprise. Written in 1902, not released by the Ellen G. White estate until 2015. I've shared this with you before. Inconceivable that this was not released until 2015. This is the only commentary of Ellen White on Daniel 12:7. Does it sound to you like this is in the past? Do you see why she could not apply Daniel 12:7 to 538 to 1798? This is real. This is a prophetic period. To the period just prior to the appearing of the Son of Man, these prophecies of Scripture point. And here their warnings and threatenings preeminently apply. Some have had past applications, but Daniel 12:7 is going to have the final fulfillment of that first application, as we read a little while ago on the 42 months of Revelation 13. The prophetic periods of Daniel, extending to the very eve of the great consummation, throw a flood of light upon events then to transpire. The book of Revelation is also replete with warning and instruction for the last generation. The beloved John portrays the fearful and thrilling scenes connected with the close of Earth's history. Question. This is from Review and Herald, September 25th, 1883. Was 1844 the very eve of the great consummation? Please, friends, don't let people tell you that these things are not true. These are false teachers that are tickling our ears. They don't want Jesus to come. There are 3 prophetic periods in Daniel 12. Time, times and a half, mentioned 6 other times in Scripture as previously noted. 1290 days and 1335 days. All are in the future. This is why Mrs. White deleted all 3 periods from the 1843 prophetic chart used by the Millerites when she was directed by God to print a corrected chart in 1850. Both charts are covered in detail on slides 530 to 543 in part 4 of my YouTube series, 6,000 Years End in the Year 2022. I dare say 99% of this church has never seen the 1850 prophetic chart. Do you know why? Because the dates in the book of Uriah Smith, the 1290, 1260, and 1335, which were included in Uriah Smith's chart, in the Millerite chart, and which was used by Uriah Smith to arrive at 1844, all 3 dates were removed by Ellen White and James White when they printed a new chart in 1850. And nobody in this church has seen this chart. Friends, do not let anyone tell you that Daniel 12 is in the past. It is in the future, and we are looking right down to it right now. 2022, Day of Atonement. 2021, Pentecost. 2021, Unleavened Bread. Why are they so suspicious? The Hebrews were exiled to Babylon for 70 years for failure to observe God's sabbatical years. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. 2 Chronicles 36:21. For I am the Lord, I change not. Malachi 3:6. Are you going to let a pastor, a priest, a friend tell you that the sabbatical year is not important? The Jewish economy revolves around the Jubilee year, which was the climax of 7 sabbatical cycles, each one ending on a sabbatical year. The sabbatical year was also known as the acceptable year of the Lord, Isaiah 61:2 and Luke 4:19. The year of release, Deuteronomy 31:10. The year of my redeemed, Isaiah 63:4. And the year of recompenses, Isaiah 34:8. It is a biblical principle that God's people will be delivered at the end of a sabbatical year. Look at these quotes. At the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release. Deuteronomy 15:1. At the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, Deuteronomy 31:10. At the end of 7 years, let ye go every man his brother a Hebrew. Jeremiah 34:14. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Luke 4:19. The last week of the 70-week prophecy began in AD 27 when Jesus was baptized, and ended in AD 34 when probation closed for the Jewish nation. Both were sabbatical years. Counting backwards or forwards by 7 sabbatical years or 49 Jubilee years from AD 27 takes us all the way back to Adam or all the way forward to Christ. Because we know Jesus commenced his ministry, Jesus was baptized in AD 27. Ellen White says that in The Desire of Ages and in The Great Controversy. You've seen that in my charts before. Don't forget that year 0 does not count. Take a computer, put 27 on it, and start adding sevens. You're going to land in 2015, 2022, 2029. Friends, do not believe the people that are telling you that 2027 is the end of the 6,000 years. 2027, to get there, they use a 50-year jubilee, not biblical. But more importantly, all of the dates in the Great Controversy that fall on sabbatical years, none of them except one, AD 27, using a 50-year jubilee, lands on a sabbatical year. Here are the dates. Let's look at them carefully. Date number 1, 457 BC, the commencement of the 2300 years. It fell at the end of a sabbatical year. Date number 2, AD 27, Jesus was baptized. Date number 4, AD 34, probation closed for the Jewish nation. All of these are sabbatical years. Date number 5, AD 538, the commencement of the 1260-year papal reign. AD 1798, the end of the 1260-year papal reign. Number 7, AD 1840, Josiah Leach predicted the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Now go back to number 3, AD 31. In the middle of AD 27 to AD 34, AD 31, in the midst of the week of years, like Daniel 9, 24 to 27 calls it, like Ellen White calls it in The Desire of Ages, page 233, in the midst of the week of years, Jesus was crucified. Now look at item number 8, 1844. 1840 was a sabbatical year. 1847 was a sabbatical year. 1844, in the midst of the week of years, Jesus entered the most holy place. Friends, please, if you don't believe anything else, can you not believe that this is not coincidence? This is the end of the world. 2022 is the end of the 6,000 years. You know, I've had this study out for 3.5 years. Not one person has come by and said, a lot of them say, oh, that cannot be, it's impossible. Not one has said, brother, I did the math and you found it wrong. I've got mathematicians, I've got finance people, I've got people that have written to me and said, brother, I cannot prove this wrong. The majority of people have never taken the time to read it or to study it. Trust me, 2022 is extremely suspicious and it's right around the corner. And now that we're seeing how fast things are moving, there is an element of surprise in all of the writings of Ellen White. This will come as an overwhelming surprise. I have shared them with you before. A great terror is soon to come upon human beings. It will happen as fast as the lightning that Ezekiel saw in his visions. It will come as a thief in the night. All of these applications are for the church of God. The world is going to have their own problems. When the national Sunday law comes, they're going to be caught by a surprise. But this church is not going to have a warning. When the Sunday law comes to America, soon, very soon, shortly thereafter, in my opinion, this church is going to be completely wiped out, and the 144,000 are going to take this message to the world. If you are still wrestling with sin, friends, you will not be able to endure what's coming. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. This is the key here. Strong's Concordance assigns its 4150 moed to the words time and times in Daniel 12:7, and defines it thus: an appointment, a fixed time or season, especially a festival. This is not counted in days or in years, this is counted in feasts. Notice, when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, refers to the final persecution of Christians. Since time and times are moeds, this period, unlike the other 5 except for Revelation 12:14, is counted in feasts. The following 3 commands have never been changed. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of harvest, which is Pentecost, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year. Exodus 23:14-17. This command is repeated 2 more times. Look at Exodus 34:18-23. Thrice in the year shall all your men children appear before the Lord God. Look at Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times in a year shall thy males appear before the Lord thy God. Clear. You can't argue with that. That's scripture. This is not a message for the world. This is a message for God's church. Just like it happened in 1844. Had it not been for Samuel Snow, they would have never figured this out. So God has 3 special times in the year that he requires us to attend his feast. In the spring, unleavened bread. In the summer, Pentecost. And in the fall, 3 feasts take place in the fall: trumpets, atonements, and tabernacles, all within 21 days, 22 days. We are delivered at the end of a sabbatical year, which always starts and ends on the Day of Atonement. That's from Leviticus 25:1-7. Counting back by feast or times, according to Daniel 12:7 or Revelation 12:14, which we're going to look at in a minute, from the Day of Atonement, counting back from the Day of Atonement in 2022, because we have to be delivered at the end of a sabbatical year, which always falls at the Day of Atonement. Counting back from the Day of Atonement in 2022, we have the following. 1 time, Pentecost 2022. 2 times, unleavened bread 2022 and tabernacles 2021. And half a time, Pentecost 2021. This is how I am sharing with you that, in my opinion, persecution will start for Christians in the Feast of Pentecost. Now, it gets a lot deeper than this. We're going to see it. In consequence of continual transgression, the moral law was repeated in awful grandeur from Sinai. Christ gave to Moses religious precepts which were to govern everyday life. These statutes were explicitly given to guard the 10 commandments. They are not the same. A lot of people say, oh no, she meant commandments. She's talking about statutes. No. Every time you see in the Bible, statutes and commandments, keep my statutes, commandments, and judgments, etc. These statutes were explicitly given to guard the 10 commandments. They were not shadowy types to pass away with the death of Christ. They were to be binding upon men in every age as long as time should last. These commands were enforced by the power of the moral law, and they clearly and definitely explain that law. Christ speaks to such. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. What is the will of the Father? That we keep his commandments. Christ, to enforce the will of his Father, became the author of the statutes and precepts given through Moses to the people of God. Christians who extol Christ but array themselves against the law governing the Jewish church array Christ against Christ. Review on Herald, May 6, 1875. If after reading that, you do not think that these statutes are binding upon Seventh-day Adventists today, I can't help you anymore. There's nothing more that I can give you. I've given you all the ammunition I have. But it gets much deeper. Notice, statutes. Tithing is a divinely ordained statute. Numbers 18, 21 to 23. Prohibition against fat and blood is a statute. Leviticus 3:17. Prohibition against drinking alcohol is a statute. Leviticus 10:9. Prohibition against eating unclean meats is a statute. Leviticus 10:10 and 11. The sabbatical year is a statute. Leviticus 25:18. The Jubilee year is a statute. Leviticus 25:18. And God says 4 times that his feasts are statutes forever. Leviticus 23:6 to 8, 14, 15, 21, 27, 31, 34 to 36, and 41. And if you want to see how deep and crooked the devil is, in the New International Version of the Bible, which is now being pushed by a lot of Seventh-day Adventist churches, the word statutes has been completely eliminated. So you read precepts and commandments and laws and you wonder, well, what is it? Well, thank God we have an English prophet that included the word statutes for our understanding right now. What about Passover 2021? Persecution starts if God chooses to deliver us in 2022, which I truly believe, because if not, we would have to go to 2029, not 2027. I don't think the world can last another 9 years, and the 6,000 years would go past 2022. It would be, if we went to 2000, it would be 6,000 more years, six more years. It would be 6,006 instead of 6,000. Notice this. This is from the book Zephaniah. This is one of the 5 books that the ministers, their wives and their children were studying. This is where she says the final moments of Earth's history are delineated by the Jewish economy. This is Zephaniah right here. And it shall come to pass in the day of the Lord's sacrifice, Passover, that I will punish the princes and the king's children, and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. Zephaniah 1:8. The Lord's sacrifice is a reference to Passover or Feast of Unleavened Bread. Look at Luke 22:1. It says Passover, also called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, when Jesus was crucified. The princes and the king's children is a reference to God's church. And it shall come to pass in that day, Passover day, saith the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and a howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills. Howl, ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down, all they that bear silver are cut off. Zephaniah 1:10 and 11. This is again, whenever this happens, it's going to happen at Passover. When all the bearers of silver are cut off, when the stock market finally falls, and there's experts all over saying that it's about to, and people are putting their money into Bitcoin, because people have nowhere to go and put their money, because if they put it in the bank, they get 1%, and they're all going to be wiped out. Your 401ks are all going to be wiped out. Friends, please wake up, wake up. A great crashing, we're going to have a great earthquake, and the financial markets are going to fall. Merchant people are cut down refers to the final collapse of the stock market after the national Sunday law is enacted in America. This national apostasy will speedily be followed by national ruin. Review and Herald, June 15, 1897. Does it fit? National Sunday law comes. Ellen White says, I looked around and I couldn't see a Seventh-day Adventist. We're going to be hiding for fear because we're going to be persecuted. And then 50 days later, at the Feast of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit falls, and we go out and proclaim the message. And it shall come to pass at that time, this is still Zephaniah, that I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lease, that say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. Again, searching Jerusalem with candles refers to the judgment of the church, which comes before the judgment of the world. For all we know, the searching of Jerusalem started already. I have shared that with you. The things that we're seeing happening in the Seventh-day Adventist Church after we voted against the women's ordination, the discussions between top people in our church, the criticizing, the sermons that we're hearing, what's going on. You've got, I believe, the searching of Jerusalem has already started, probably last year. That's my take. Gather yourselves together. Listen to this, friends. Zephaniah 2, 1 and 2. Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired, before the decree bring forth, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. Zephaniah 2, 1 and 2. What decree do you suppose Zephaniah is talking about? It's the Sunday law decree. Wonderful events are soon to open before the world. The end of all things is at hand. The time of trouble is about to come upon the people of God. Then it is that the decree will go forth, forbidding those who keep the Sabbath of the Lord to buy or sell, and threatening them with punishment and even death if they do not observe the first day of the week as the Sabbath. The exhortation of the prophet Zephaniah is, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired, before the decree bring forth, before the day pass as the shaft, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you. And she quotes Zephaniah 2, 1 and 3. Review and Herald, November 19th, 1908. This is real, friends. When this decree comes, it will come at Passover. This is real. Zephaniah 3, 18 to 20. I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will get them praise and fame in every land, where they have been put to shame. At that time will I bring you again, even in the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith the Lord. Zephaniah 3:18. The solemn assembly refers to God's feast, the last day of the feast of unleavened bread, Deuteronomy 16:8, or the last day of the feast of tabernacles, 2 Chronicles 7:9. It's the only place in the Bible you're going to find solemn assembly. The reproach of it was a burden refers to the abuse God's people have suffered for observing God's feast. It has become, without a doubt, the most controversial subject in Adventism. And you've got people in high places writing books about the feast and attacking them and speaking wrong about them. Friends, do your research. Please do your research. Remember what Ellen White says in The Great Controversy, when the final Ezekiel 9 takes place and angels start destroying literally people. She says that's going to be literally fulfilled. I have shared that with you before. She says they will start with the pastors, and the people are going to turn on the pastors and say, why did you deceive me? You should have known better. I relied on you. Don't let these people tell you this is not real, friends. The reproach of it was a burden refers to the abuse God's people have suffered for observing God's festivals. I will make you a name and a praise refers to the sealing of the 144,000. Am I saying that the National Sunday Law will take place this Passover? Maybe, maybe not. But look at the order of events that take place before the National Sunday Law is enacted, and then 50 days later comes Pentecost. Zephaniah 1:8, punish the princes. Zephaniah 1:10, great crashing, merchant people are cut down. Zephaniah 1:12, search Jerusalem with candles. Zephaniah 2, gather yourselves together before the decree bring forth. This is clear, very clear. Habakkuk said, put it on tables and let it go out. This is what's going on. John saw God's church persecuted twice, AD 538 to 1798. She has used 5 of those 7 events for AD 538 to 1798. But notice, Revelation 12:14 never has been used before. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. Never has been used by Ellen White. Notice, Strong Concordance assigns its 2540 kairos to the words time and times in Revelation 12:14 and defines it thus: kairos is used in the New Testament. This is how Strong's puts it. Kairos is used in the New Testament to signify a season, a time, a period possessed of certain characteristics. This is a feast, just like Daniel 12:7. Ellen White has not ever applied either one of those two to 538 to 1798. Why haven't you heard of Samuel Snow? Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ. Colossians 2:16 and 17. What did Paul mean by which are a shadow of things to come? An interesting scene took place in the year 1957 when our scholars found themselves compiling Volume 7 of the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary. Using the writings of Mrs. White, they had done a fantastic job at explaining each of the verses in the volume. But they were surprised to find that Mrs. White, in her 70 years of ministry, never received one ray of light, nor made a single declaration in reference to Colossians 2:16 and 17. Can you believe that? Not one reference to Colossians 2:16 and 17. Our church fathers nailed to the cross what they thought were shadows on the authority of one single statement from Albert Barnes, a Presbyterian commentator. Since that volume was published 64 years ago, this error has poisoned the minds of thousands of our pastors and leaders. And I could tell you a testimony. I'm not going to give you names, but let me tell you, I have written letters to conference presidents. I have written letters to people that are preaching against these festivals today, and I have said, explain this and explain this and explain this. I've never heard a reply. I finally got a reply from a very, very big organization in our church. The person making these comments had not even read my booklet. They have not researched this. They had given it to an assistant, and an assistant wrote to me and said, you're wrong. Look at this book that we have just published on the festivals being nailed to the cross. Have mercy, have mercy, have mercy, Lord, on our people. This is what Albert Barnes wrote. On this passage, Albert Barnes, Presbyterian commentator, well observes, there is no evidence from this passage, Colossians 2:16 and 17, that he, Paul, would teach that there was no obligation to observe any holy time. For there is not the slightest reason to believe that he meant to teach that one of the commandments had ceased to be binding on mankind. He had his eye on the great number of days which were observed by the Hebrews as festivals as part of their ceremonial and typical law, and not to the moral law or the 10 Commandments. No part of the moral law, no one of the 10 Commandments could be spoken of as a shadow of good things to come. Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 7, page 206. How dare that poor man say that that's what Paul had in mind when Acts of the Apostles, don't remember, I've quoted it before, it's in my little feast booklet, 390, 391, 190, 191, I forget now. For 8 days, Paul kept the feast of unleavened bread with his converts. Paul! Do you think Paul would keep the feast with his converts if he was nailed to the cross 25 years earlier? You will not find in the scriptures or in the spirit of prophecy a single declaration that God's feasts are part of the ceremonial law. Protestants have used Colossians 2:16 and 17 for 177 years to accuse Seventh-day Adventists of legalism. Now, Seventh-day Adventists are using the same text to accuse feast keepers of legalism. It is impossible to understand Colossians 2:16 and 17 without understanding the Jewish economy. For a complete explanation of Colossians 2:16 and 17, please see pages 22 and 23 in my booklet, God's Feast, Sabbatical Years, and Jubilee, which is now being read in 59 countries in 6 continents. When I first started sending that book out a year and a half ago, I said in my newsletter, 20 people from 20 countries have requested this. Friends, this is not my doing. Ellen White said every divine institution was to be restored in Prophets and Kings. This institution has to be restored. God's people have to understand what the statutes are all about. We don't need Ellen White to prove that you cannot eat alcohol, drink alcohol, or eat unclean meats. These are statutes. And the sabbatical year, and the Jubilee year, and the feast are statutes. You will also find extremely interesting in my June 14, 2000 newsletter entitled Exposing the Skeleton in the SDA Closet of 1888. You will then understand what really happened in 1888 with Jones and Waggoner, which only a few have dared to speak about. I shared that with you, but not in a video, I don't think. And most people probably didn't read it. A great gentleman, 92-year-old man that just died a year and a half ago, that had written a book, that had written that, Exposing the Skeleton in the SDA Closet of 1888, went back and researched all the 1888 materials. The issue in 1888, which you hear, righteousness by faith. Yeah, but why didn't they say what the issue was? Oh, it's righteousness by faith. All of the issue was Jones and Waggoner were pushing the feast days. Go back and check it, friends. Please go back and check it. Read what that dear old brother wrote and see what he quotes and how he quotes Uriah Smith and other people in 1888 and how they tried to suppress this, and they tried to suppress Ellen White. And obviously Ellen White at that time was told by the Lord, listen, don't touch this. We gotta grow, leave it alone. And Ellen White left it alone. But she wrote enough about statutes that now we can put these pieces together. Hebrews 10, 1-9 clearly reveals that the only sacrifices were nailed to the cross. The Jews were to offer the same burnt offerings, meat offerings, drink offerings, and sacrifices on the Sabbath as on the feast days. You have the scriptures there. 1 Chronicles 23:31, 2 Chronicles 2:4, 2 Chronicles 8:13, 31:3, Nehemiah 10:33, Isaiah 1:10-14, Ezekiel 45:17, and Hosea 2:11. Told us time after time, listen, this is what you offer every day, but on the Sabbath, offer double sacrifices. A lot of people tell me, brother, how can you keep the feast? Are you going to start sacrificing again? The lamb that was sacrificed represented Jesus, the true Lamb of God. When Jesus died on the cross, we discontinued the offering of sacrifices, but have continued worshiping on God's holy Sabbath. Should we treat the feast days any different?